Welcome to Whether or Not. It is September 11th. We are here on a Thursday, and guess what? Had a couple of scattered showers earlier this morning in southwestern, northwestern South Dakota. We'll have another warm day today. Temperatures, so probably in the 90s. Hit 90s yesterday, Brian, across western South Dakota.
It sure did, and we are in a warm weather pattern. We're in a humid pattern at times, and it looks like scattered thunderstorms are going to be part of the discussion today. We're going to try to nail down a few of the things we're watching. And it looks like right now into next week, too, we probably will see some rain. But, of course, it depends on the haves and the have-nots. I know lately there's been quite a variety, a difference there in the rain patterns, Scott.
And, you know, as we go into next week, even though those air temperatures will cool, I still think our dew point temperatures should stay fairly warm. And we'll talk about our warm and humid conditions that we're in right now. We'll see how long that is expected to last. Along with that, our storm chances. Starting across western South Dakota, eventually moving into eastern KELOLAND, maybe by Sunday. Talk about the pattern, and of course, we'll always end with that snow trend. What are the models saying for snow? That's something we've been doing on a daily basis since the end of August. Been looking at some long-range models as to if they're picking up on any snow. Did you take a look at that 45-day model yesterday?
We did not. I ran out of time, so there was a day missing. I'm guilty.
No.
But I did tease it because I thought, okay, I know we're going to regroup tomorrow. And so we did an interview with Jay yesterday.
From Europe.
Right. Yeah, he called in from Europe. So I thought, well, we'll put Jay Trobeck in here. And then he had a really interesting segment. But no, we didn't do the snow update. So, yeah, the anticipation is building, Scott, to see what October, 45 days into the future, right?
But did you look at that, maybe not on this show, but did you look at it on your own time?
Briefly glanced at it. So,
I looked at it yesterday. I'm like, what happened?
Yeah. There's a few changes on there.
There were a few changes yesterday. It's back to where I expected it to be today. And
okay.
We'll show that coming up. Of course, that's at the end of the show. You have to watch the whole show. We'll talk more about that coming up at the end of the show. Otherwise, the outline again for today, warm and humid, storm chances, and our weather patterns. Stay with us. We have plenty to talk about on this latest edition of Whether or Not. Welcome back to Whether or Not. Taking yesterday off kind of got me off of the rhythm of things because I do want to show you our forecast for today. I want to show that during the first segment when I do these shows, but forgot about it, talked more about the outline, and got all excited about the snow. But let's talk about that forecast now. We do have scattered showers, thunderstorms expected across western South Dakota for the later part of the afternoon and evening. There is a marginal risk that some of these may become strong to severe, hail, wind being the main threat. This is during the evening at 8 o'clock. We'll see how far east these travel. By 10 o'clock in the evening, it's trying to show something in central South Dakota, in and around Pierre, as well as parts of western KELOLAND. Let's go ahead and change the view because I think this only goes out until about midnight. You see these scattered showers and thunderstorms in central South Dakota. There's a chance that, these may hold together and move to the northeast. And we'll see if they make their way far north to, say, the Sioux Falls area by late tonight toward daybreak tomorrow. Don't be too surprised for maybe a scattered shower or thunderstorm to appear across southeastern South Dakota. For the rest of this afternoon, we'll have temperatures in the 80s and 90s. Another day with 90-degree heat across western KELOLAND. And we'll see if we get any of those isolated showers or thunderstorms to hold during the early part of tonight in central South Dakota, and then maybe late tonight toward daybreak tomorrow across the southeast. So let's go ahead and jump right into our warm and humid pattern, Brian, that we've been following, my goodness, of course, all week, dating back, beginning of this week, continuing through the weekend and maybe even beyond.
Right. It's a very stable pattern. It's just this conveyor belt warm, moist air coming up from the south. And at this point, we feel very inclined to keeping the numbers above normal. Next week, and probably even into this weekend, some of the differences will be just a function of thunderstorms and rain, but a lot more orange and yellow on that map. And then, Scott, of course, the dew point forecast continues to be a point of conversation here.
Isn't that something? Dew point temperatures in the 60s, still trying to get 70 degrees there in Pierre. That, of course, is the moisture you feel as you do walk outdoors, the higher humidity. And that's what we have going on with our Futurecast dew point temperatures into this weekend, still showing these numbers in the 60s, the air temperature in the 80s, a chance for 90-degree heat in southeastern South Dakota on Saturday. We'll bring in maybe better chances to see rain across eastern KELOLAND as we get into Sunday. And you notice how those dew point temperatures do remain in the middle 60s across eastern South Dakota, into Minnesota and Iowa. And watch what happens here, even as we get into next week. And we'll talk more about this coming up a little bit later. But dew point temperatures are expected to stay in the middle 60s. And, of course, that takes us into the middle of September, if not maybe even a little bit beyond.
Yeah, and every time if we look at a map like that and we see higher dew points, we know that the characteristics of the atmosphere would be, at least from a moisture energy perspective, we've got some ingredients for thunderstorms. What we are missing here, though, is probably the lack of a stronger current of wind in the jet stream. Okay. The mid layers of the atmosphere, we're not looking at as much what we call shear. So as a result of that, widespread severe weather, while we've kind of had points that we would speculate about that, I think it's probably contained because we just don't have the major blocks. Can we get some severe weather? Yes, we can, and we do need to be on guard for spots here and there, and I think that would warrant even into the weekend, Scott.
Well, and that's something I want to talk about with these higher dew point temperatures. This is a graphic that I made that went on air during KELOLAND this morning. It's looking at both the dew point temperatures, what you see highlighted in green, covering eastern South Dakota, mainly those dew point temperatures that are 60 and above. But I also put in Futurecast here to kind of show where we can see a couple of these scattered showers and thunderstorms develop. Keep in mind, this is for next week. As these thunderstorms roll through, we still have our dew point temperatures in the 60s, but I don't think we'll have our air temperature still in the 80s to near 90 degrees. Those air temperatures are expected to cool, probably retreating back to the 70s, which is about average. But I find it interesting that even though the air temperature is cool, we'll still stay high with these dew point numbers. And those may work hand in hand and hopefully bring in at least better chances for rain for those that are looking for a little more rain. As we go through next week, I labeled it as more active weather. That's expected to happen as we get into next week. And I really don't see a cool down happening until maybe day 7 or 8, as we do try to bring in some lower dew point temperatures and somewhat cooler air, but we'll just retreat, I think, closer to average still, which means numbers into the 70s. Now, along with our higher dew point temperatures, warm temperatures, we still have a lot of energy in the atmosphere, Brian. As you can see, our storm energy graphic was showing that, and that is something that, as you mentioned, chances for severe weather, nothing right now that seems to be off the charts, but enough to give us a marginal risk even today across western South Dakota.
That's right. Yep. And that marginal category suggests that, yes, a couple of storm cells could turn severe, but the sustainability of widespread severe weather is not anticipated because basically these things kind of flare up on the heat of the day combined with that upper level disturbance. But there's not that supporting mechanism there to sustain a big line of storms for a long ways. And remember, too, that the trajectory on these storms this weekend, when they do develop in these line segments, whatever that looks like, these broken pieces here and there, they'll be trying to drift, I would even say, more south to north.
Okay.
Maybe argue southwest to northeast. But, so for Sioux Falls, you really have to look probably Norfolk, Nebraska, Lincoln, somewhere in there for storms to be coming up our direction. And if that happens, say tomorrow morning, there's a little chance you mentioned that rain in Nebraska comes up, but a lot of this is tied back to Pierre and Bismarck, actually. So the front end of the forecast is steered more to the west, and then we'll just kind of watch the timeline. I'm just going to think at this point, we'll sit back and probably watch a lot of thunderstorms west of Sioux Falls, Scott.
And as we get into Sunday, we've been mentioning that we do have better chances for rain on Sunday with showers and thunderstorms, but it's interesting to see that the amount of storm energy in the atmosphere isn't as great as what it was across western or central South Dakota. As you know, temperatures will still be slightly above average, not as hot as, say, Saturday when we expect to see a high temperature of 90 in Sioux Falls. We'll cool it back to the 80s. That's still above average. The average high temperature by then is around middle 70s, maybe 76 or an average high for Sioux Falls. So, yeah, we'll still be above average. But as that graphic I showed you a little bit ago, too, with our dew point temperatures and our chances for showers and thunderstorms, I think more active weather will try to return as we do get into next week. And as these storms do develop, they may run that chance for locally heavy rainfall. That's what this is trying to pick up on. This is our precipitable water in the atmosphere. Just call it available moisture. If you're able to get a couple of those thunderstorms to go, well, they may contain periods of heavy rainfall. The only problem is, even though it's trying to show that across eastern South Dakota with maybe a higher chance for some heavier rains, the problem is we just have to get a thunderstorm to develop. And, Friday, I really don't see that happening, as a lot of the lift will probably be across western South Dakota. But I could see maybe some heavier rainfall here in central and north central South Dakota as we do get into the first half of the weekend. And then for the second half of the weekend, that slowly tries to make its way over toward the James River Valley. So, Brian, to me, this is still a pattern that we've seen, I would say, throughout much of the summer, though right now the P-watt values, the amount of moisture that's in the atmosphere, it's not as stacked as, say, what we had during the summer, and I really don't think that it should be anyway.
Right. And, it's interesting you just brought that up, because on my machine, I was just looking at that, too, with the colors here on the map. So what you're seeing here, this concept of what we call P-watts, so that's precipitable water. So think of it like this. If you look at the atmosphere, you cut out a column of air from the ground all the way up to basically the top of the atmosphere, and then you register the amount of water content. Okay, there's a way we can actually integrate that and look through the depth of the atmosphere and then come up with a value. And so there's a lot of ways we kind of look at that. You can compare it to average for this time of the year. That could be a pretty useful tool. This product is just looking at the pure number. So, for colors on this map, when you see the reds and the purples like you do over the tropics, well, of course, there's going to be more water depth there versus the polar regions of the northern hemisphere. But you look at this map going into next week, and it appears that it's kind of interesting, because you can tell where that high is settling there over the Appalachians and certainly East Coast. Actually, there's some dry air entrainment, and then it kind of circles around, doesn't it? And then it comes back into the Midwest here, and that's early next week. So we've got some starch in the air. At times, it kind of varies. Notice how dry it is on the western, the mountains, and that makes sense, too. We know that that's going to be an entirely different air mass. And then, as I always say, the wild card here is the tropics a little bit, too. September so far has been pretty quiet. I know we did a story about that earlier today on the news, and, mid-September is supposed to be peak hurricane season, but there's been a lot of factors suppressing that. Obviously, the season's not done, and if anything gets entrained both on the East Coast, something wanders into the Gulf, or you talk about the Pacific Coast and off of Baja, California, sometimes that can get thrown into a map like this one here. So for now, that's kind of staying away. Nothing, that we see yet, but I've run through this many times before, and you'll suddenly see something changing here on one end or the other. If you run
that back a little bit, you can see something trying to brew near the tropics.
Well, right. In fact, let me do this, just because we're talking about that. Let me go to the zoomed out. There we go. Now, this actually will show that a little bit better. See that? There's some sort of a tropical system out in the Atlantic. Doesn't look like it's going to the East Coast yet. And then you've got more of that on the other side in the Pacific basin.
Yeah, keep going back the other way to the left. There you go. See that right there off Baja? Right there.
Yep.
And that's one thing that you pointed out. Was it last week or was it earlier this week that we might be able to get that tropical plume to sneak in here from the southwest?
Oh, yeah. And those are always wild cards, because something like that, tropical depression, whatever that looks like, that a feature like that can easily get tossed in, and then something gets drawn over the top. Those are interesting things to watch. But they tend to be players that are out there in the long-range forecast. But at this point in time, we can't nail any of that down yet. So just something to think about when the climatology of this time of year is considered, really until, mid-October. And then after that, it's a lot harder to get tropical-related moisture this far north.
Yes, so we'll talk more about that probably with our pattern as we continue with this latest edition of Weather or Not. Time to talk about the pattern, BK, as we go forward. We've been mentioning these shower and thunderstorm chances start to increase across eastern KELOLAND as we do get into next week. Air temperatures are expected to slowly cool along with it. But as we get into next week, we'll still have these higher dew point temperatures.
Absolutely, yeah. And then watching the behavior of these low pressure centers that are spinning to our west and northwest. Isn't it interesting, too, how you've got this going out to late next week, and there's still kind of this pattern of these lows coming around the bend here. So there's more uncertainty depending on how each individual spoke behaves here. But I think the consolidation is you've got a larger low up there in Canada, and then the pieces that rotate around that will drive, honestly, I think that'll drive the individual day part chances of rain for next week once we get a better idea on that.
Well, and if this thing, strengthens, dives a little bit farther to the south, then that, of course, will help bring in some much cooler, and I would think some drier air, too. But right now, we don't have that necessarily in that 7-day forecast, maybe slightly cooler by day 7. And then as we get into, oh, my goodness, we're already getting into the last week of September. It stopped here at September 25th. Looks like another ridge is trying to develop. We'll see if this holds true right there. We'll see what happens down in Arizona. There's another system out here as well as over here. So we got a lot going on, something that we'll continue to follow as we get into the second half of September. But I think the main takeaway is it will become a little more active as we do get into next week. So we talked about this throughout much of the week, trough across southwestern United States. This is going into the weekend or for the weekend, and you can see that western South Dakota on Saturday, we're looking at a better chance for showers and thunderstorms compared to what's expected in eastern KELOLAND, until we get into maybe Sunday, Monday, another area of low pressure drops in for about midweek of next week. You can see our scattered shower and thunderstorm chances during that time too. And then that will run through. We'll watch, see this trough digging here across the upper plains. I'll go ahead and draw the line in. That could be connected to that low pressure system up in the Canada. But that's going into next weekend already. That's looking at the 21st. So this can be responsible for more scattered showers and thunderstorms if this pattern does hold true. I think an interesting thing here is we bring up this 14-day rain outlook. I stopped it here through Sunday. So through the weekend, a lot of it shows up across western South Dakota, and that goes with our forecast. We'll go with scattered showers, thunderstorms, maybe in the central KELOLAND. We do have our heavier rains to our north into North Dakota. Let me go ahead and hit the button. We'll go beyond this weekend. As we continue to add on to the days here, it brings in maybe a heavy rain chance across eastern South Dakota, Minnesota, and Iowa. So as these systems do run through, we'll continue to follow that increase in shower and thunderstorm activity across eastern and southeastern KELOLAND. So, Brian, we'll get through this weekend, and I would say mostly dry in eastern South Dakota. Not to say every day will be dry. And I still think we have better chances for rain at night leading into the early morning hours for at least eastern and southeastern KELOLAND. Probably more so during the day or late afternoon, early evening in the west, as they'll closer to the lift in the atmosphere, a little bit more energy out there also.
Right, yep. And I know the folks at the Sanford International are watching things pretty carefully.
Yes, that's right.
So if you're watching, and I know for many of you, the weekend, obviously, we're painting a picture of warm weather, Scattered thunderstorms west. So then let's entertain that more on Sunday for Sioux Falls, or at least Sunday, maybe Sunday night. And then, that interesting part that you showed for Wednesday of next week was more bullish, but that is still somewhat debatable on how that low is handled. And I don't think the models have fully digested how that's going to happen yet. So it's a concept that I think is good. It's just the placement of the day of the week and how that stands. Tomorrow I still think there's some possibilities that could either move to a day later or a day earlier, those kind of things to watch.
Yeah, I mean, the trend we could try to pick up on, it's, pinpointing the exact day, because what you said, they can, speed up or they can slow down.
Yeah, and it's the behavior of upper-level lows that are tending to be more or less cut off. Remember, we talked 2 days ago about the main jet stream was way up into northern Canada?
Oh, yeah.
And see, a lot of this weather that we're getting is underneath that. So we don't have those big driver winds that, would tend to guide and steer these things. It tends to be more of you got a low, now it's going to sit a while. Things will kind of shoot out at us a little bit at times. These little spokes will come out. So, again, the little particulars there, we'll just keep an eye on.
But you could still use the water at your place.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I know
I only had 0.2 of an inch of rain here a couple days ago. Nice to get it, but, I mean, the cracks in the ground, everything is...
I've noticed a lot of dry areas around my house, too. So, I could definitely use some rainfall, and we'll see what we can do. Maybe late Sunday and, next week. Check those 7-day forecasts online, and a couple of these cities in the western, central South Dakota, it's every day that we have a shower or thunderstorm chance. It's more so second half of the weekend and for next week across eastern KELOLAND, and that chance can range anywhere from 20, maybe as high as say 40 or 50%.
Right, and so it just keeps us on our toes. There are going to be some thunderstorms around, and then. Yeah, plan your activities, though, because you'll run in and run out of it, too, as I think that'll be the nature of this.
All right, here we go. There's that crowd again.
Uh-oh, they're back.
All right, let's see what we can do here. Let's first start with, I think I have snow depth. Okay, well, we know there's nothing going on.
Do you find any snow depth? Even in the Rockies?
I didn't find, and I hit the button fast. Let's get through that graphic. So here's the next 14 days. Okay, again, everything in the higher elevations off to our west and to our southwest. And I could change this view, too. Anything going on into Canada? Well, not much, as they'll be warm. So that's a look at the next 14 days. But as we've been showing, we can go a little bit farther than that. And that's what this is showing. And Brian, we talked about, I looked at it yesterday. I think it was down to 7 or 8 members showing. In fact, can I go back I think I could go back in time and show that. I think right now it's showing about 18. Mm-hmm. Can I go back? Yeah, maybe a little bit more than that. Okay.
A couple of runs ago.
Yeah, that's here we go. That's probably the one that I looked at. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep, 8 members. And they're all later. They're all in the 11th of October and later. So here's the latest. Oh, it looks like there's a lot more. I think there's 10 more. I think earlier I counted 18. But again, it's showing middle of October to bring these in. The earliest one, if you line it up, that's around the 7th or 8th of October to bring in a snow chance. Now, that's just looking at Sioux Falls. Let's bring this map in. This is your favorite AI version of the European. Okay. And you can see how it's trying to bring in at least some measurable snows for some of us, right? Western, southeastern KELOLAND. And look at the date on that, too. Upper right-hand portion of your screen. We're still talking September.
Yeah, and I think it probably, here's my opinion. Okay? I'll give you my opinion on that. I think that's probably on the AI side of things. I noticed that
it likes to be a little colder.
It tends to, for whatever reason, it's looking backwards. Of course, it's a machine learning algorithm, right? So it's looking backwards at historical records, and for whatever reason, it tends to be overly generous with the snow product. So
don't tell me that.
I think that's what we would have to be aware of. Now, based on our conversation yesterday with Dr. Troback, let's see what he comes back with from the conferences he's attending, because I know that this the tools that are being used, he will always usually give us some other additional tools other than maybe the operational ones. And so it'll be interesting to see what the latest data is showing.
And I think he's bringing back more information on the AI version of the European, right?
Yeah, that is where a lot of we're seeing success in that in a lot of regards. But again, the snow product, there have been maybe some things here that I've seen at least so far that look a little bit too advantageous toward too much snow. But again, I'm going to let the month of October kind of, simmer. We'll see what it starts picking up on. I think that's an interesting thing. That's how we learn. We always have to keep our minds open to, okay, what do we have? What's the next tool? What's the next thing on the horizon? And then how do we use that? And then if we can come up with some good questions and then form a hypothesis and test that, I love it. I think that's what science should be about. So, this show can be a great place to put those ideas out sometimes. And I'm okay with that. I think that's a fun thing to do. And if it happens to be the topic of snow and the AI, then let's see what it does here as we get into the months ahead.
But right now, you would say the AI is a little generous on bringing in those snow chances.
That appears to be my observation, yeah, so far. But, there we go.
There we go. Well, they're on your side.
The crowd that's watching the applause. When do you think most people, I don't know, it's such a subject that people are so opinionated about snow. That,
know.
A lot of people will be like, I love it for Christmas, but, anything
Can't get rid of it right after Christmas. And snow's not a bad thing. Yes, we don't like driving on it. I understand that. Causes problems. But snow's not entirely bad.
Well, think of all the ground cover we get and how it insulates our plants. I think last year, we had the winter was, up and down. We really didn't have a whole lot of snow consistently. It affects a lot of things, doesn't it? When you look at the habitat, the wildlife, and then the effect on people too. It's a big deal.
That love snow ski, love to go snowmobiling.
Right.
I'm all for that.
And if you get lack of snow, you can't do that. So, winter sports, there's a lot of things we get. You especially giving the winter forecast, but the amount of people that come in and will comment about what's the winter going to do. And I always say, we're not going to worry about tomorrow. Yes, there can be, as we sift through this data the next few weeks, gives us some food for conversation. We'll be talking about it, I'm sure, in the days ahead and the weeks ahead. But obviously, a lot of unknowns yet on the winter forecast, too.
Yeah, we'll save that for another day, but we'll continue to check what the long-range modeling is showing us. That's all the time we have for this edition of Whether or Not. Thank you for joining us, and have a great day.